Hi, everybody. I am back from my adventures.
I'm back.
Blair's back, and thank you for joining us at One More Story Games. I am Jean Leggett. I'm the CEO of the company, and this is...
I am Blair Leggett, the CTO of the company. I'm the techie or the talkie.
Yes, otherwise known as the hacker and the hustler. So thank you for popping in and making us part of your Friday afternoon ritual as we talk about the Charlaine Harris project and the adaptation of the...
No audio.
Okay, thank you. Oh, no.
Go down to sound.
Go down to sound.
Okay. And then go up. All good now. All good now.
You can hear me?
Can you hear us okay?
You can hear us? Okay. Thanks very much, Lori. Really appreciate that. All right. So let's start again. Yes. Thank you. You know what? That's always fun. We have yet to...
So then you can show over there. So that's good.
Oh, thank you. That's cool.
All right.
I really like this. Be live. Lori, if you ever want to do a live broadcast, this is really cool to use as a live broadcast tool. So we're using the BeLive.tv broadcast tool.
You probably even see it as a chyron up
Yes.
there somewhere.
So I am Jean Leggett. I'm the CEO of One More Story Games, and this is...
I am Blair Leggett, the CTO of One More Story Games, the techie to your talkie.
And otherwise known as the hacker and the hustler.
Yes.
And I have been away. I missed you all dearly. I missed last week's broadcast. I was in Miramichi, New Brunswick. And in fact, I have to show you this awesome book that I got. So it's a picture book of Miramichi. And I was at the Jaloo Festival of Animation and Gaming. And it really is a celebration of the students that they were showcasing their work. They're like 2D artists and game programmers. And I was blown away. So yeah. I'm super excited. I'm looking forward to even maybe hiring some of these talented people. And that's where I met Lori. Lori's really awesome.
Hey, Lori.
I love what she and her husband are working on because they are making serious games. And today that's kind of our topic.
Our topic is on serious games.
Yes. So we will repeat every, 8 to 10 minutes just to let people know. Today is a much heavier topic than we have covered in previous podcasts and videos.
We're finally getting to that chapter 5.
Yes. So chapter 5 of the Shakespeare's Landlord novel is a fairly deep and sort of like a jarring, what was your first experience when you...
So I read it. We were just sort of shutting down for the night and I was reading it. And as soon as I hit that chapter and read it through, I wanted to completely finish it before I started to talk about it. And I just had to put the book down and say, Jean, we have to talk.
It had been well over a year since I had read the novel, and I guess as a woman, so let's just say trigger warning, yeah. Right? So in chapter 5, we discover Lily Bard's deep dark secret, and so Lily had. Well, she moved from Memphis to Shakespeare. She wanted to get away from her life because she had been kidnapped.
She'd been abducted.
Well, that's kidnapped.
Okay.
She was, literally, I think her car broke down on the side of the road, yep. And somebody was coming down, and it was a van. It opened up, and she got pulled in. And it's a very sinister, it's a hard read.
It is. Yeah, it's very tough.
It reminds me, and so she was abducted. She was taken to a remote location where nobody would hear her scream.
It was out in the middle of a field.
She was sexually assaulted by the people that were holding her captive, but then they also sort of, I hesitate to use the word pimped out, but they had more people come in and physically abuse her.
He abducts her and then rents her out to a biker gang.
And they assault, they brutally assault her. Thankfully, Charlaine doesn't go into super detail about it, but it's, well, compared to some of the other things we've experienced, right? And they cut her up and they mutilate her and they leave her for dead. And so that's what, as you were reading this novel, saying, so Jean, did you think about this when you signed the contract to adapt this into a game? And what is the responsibility that we have as storytellers? Now, I have to say, I've now had a chance to read through, refresh my memory about book 2, book 3. You've already on to book 4.
I've read book 4 now, Shakespeare's Trollop, and I'm into 5.
So we picked a humdinger. Like, Charlene doesn't hold things back. And also remember, her stories are set in 1996, and we chose to keep it in that time frame.
Yep.
So in the first book, we have the unveiling of the sexual assault and all that entails. In book 2, we have quite a bit of racial conflict and liberal use of the N-word. And so we're talking about that. It's like, well, I'm not really comfortable having that in the game.
Yeah. Can I just say I get really angry around that word. And especially, I mean, looking at the news recently, Bill Maher was called out for using that word. And if you haven't seen the response, they had, I think, Ice Cube on the show to talk about it and say that, look, that's not your word anymore. That's always something that we want to be sensitive to as content creators. In book 3, there is child molestation. And book 4, we have more sexual violence that's happening. So, I mean, it's really quite remarkable that Charlene has tackled these in her series. In chapter or book 5 that I can sort of tell you about, it is about women dealing with the consequences of their assaults. And so it's very personal stories about, it's showing what the consequences of this crime is to the victims.
Yeah.
And you don't just get over it. It's continually, and again, maybe it's a good time to sort of say, hey, trigger warnings, folks. We're dealing with some tough topics here.
And, the purpose of this podcast is not to dive super deep into the graphic explanation of what's happening in the book, but we really wanted to have that conversation as what is our responsibility. Now, Lori, do you mind if I talk briefly about what I think your game is, or the topic that you guys were talking about working on? So just let me know, Lori, if that's okay to mention. When I met Lori and her husband in Miramichi, they have a really fantastic company. I think it's called Cold Furnace Studios. And from my understanding, it's a lot of military veterans.
Oh, wow. Not at all, thanks. This is Lori.
Thank you. So Lori's fantastic company is taking care of some really deep, ugly stuff. Like, we're talking human trafficking.
Oh, wow.
And, oh, yeah.
Wow.
So how do you create a safe environment for a game player? First of all, do we call them gamers? Because is it an experience that they're having in an interactive manner? Or are they playing? Because
it's almost interactive learning in that sense, would you say?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's sort of like the definition of a serious video game. So it's balancing this play versus learning versus deep topics.
Lori, we'd like to put a link to your company maybe in the show notes, if that's okay, just to
please, by all means, let us know. And thank you all for who've all sort of joined in to be with us today. It's interesting. I don't have a problem talking about this because sexual assault happens to a lot of women. We're ogled, we're leered at, people make comments, and then there's the spectrum of physical assault. And, I was very young. There's a typo in there, Lori, so I'll wait till you get it right. Sorry to sort of like break the ice there. When I was younger, when I was 16, one of my coworkers at McDonald's actually physically rubbed up against me. And like, I was 16. I didn't know anything. I didn't know any better. And I think that happens to a lot of young women where, and also young men. I mean, sexual assault is not limited just to women.
No. We don't ever want to.
No, and please, that's not the message.
It's a very complicated topic, and even a quick podcast like this is never going to completely cover everything, and that's not. But it is something that I think we'll continue to talk about, because this forms the basis of Lily's character, and that's why it's important to talk about. And how do we deal with and show and honor Charlaine Harris's work and this character?
So we had kicked around some ideas. I thought you had some interesting ideas, but I said no.
Right.
And the conversation was, do we create a gamified aspect of chapter 5 during the assault scene and make it interactive so that she can fight back? And I was like, no, absolutely not. That's not this game. What I want to see is that narratively that we talk about what has happened to her. And I really don't want to go into super great detail, because I think we can infuse who Lily is with little pieces of that. I remember going into the movie theater with you to see The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And those of you who are watching who have seen Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, you know what I'm talking about. When
both the European and the American version. I mean,
well, we had seen the European version first.
Yeah.
And wow, I mean, it was so visceral, that assault scene. And it sort of like I caught my breath on it. And I know personally many women who have been assaulted. It's sadly become a part of the collective female experience. But I don't really want to take away from what we're talking about here, which is, how does it shape who Lily is as a character?
Well, and I mean, and it shows also Elizabeth Salander, and sort of how it shapes how her character deals with it. And what's interesting is Charlaine is writing this in 96, right? And that there is this universality between American women, European women, Latin American women. It is this shared experience
Violence against women.
Yeah. And so that's important for us to deal with and discuss. And it is going to be a part of the game, but it's not. You're not going to relive it.
Scenario.
You won't relive that, but
No.
But what you will have, though, is we're going to try to be honest about what a survivor feels and the kind of emotions that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that's important for us to show the consequences of and how people live through it.
Well, and it's such a central part of who Lily becomes. And we see that she has formed this whole life in Shakespeare, trying to become someone else, somebody strong, so this will never happen to her again.
Yes.
She repels people. She has deep trust issues.
Yep.
Like, these are all components of who she is. And later on in the book, towards the end, she has made an enemy out of the church janitor, Norval. And there's some sass going back in, because Lily she suffers no fools. And sorry, I maybe should wait till you finish your beverages.
That's putting it lightly.
Yeah.
But
so Lily has like a zero tolerance for foolish people, and Norval gets drunk. He's supposed to be on the wagon. No judgment there, but he gets drunk and he attacks Lily. And there's a conversation that happens afterwards, and you can almost hear it coming from Lily's voices. I wasn't quite prepared. Now, she ultimately flattens him, and it is taken care of, but there's that piece of her survival instinct where she felt like she didn't do a good enough. She should have been ready.
Yeah, the blame. She blames herself.
And I really want when men and women when they play our game, that they come away feeling, I don't want to say empowered, that feels cheesy, but that they have an empathy for somebody who has gone through that experience.
Yeah.
that, like, that would be the biggest gift for me, is like a deeper understanding, empathy, and maybe that if they encounter a friend who has gone through that experience, that they'll be more receptive to listening and to being supportive.
I mean, one of the things I think it's hard sometimes for men to understand is, why do we put this trigger warning on stuff? And it isn't until you've been triggered do you understand why that is important. And so that's part of what we hope to do in the game, is that Lily will be triggered by certain events, by things that people say.
There's several key points and events that happen in the novel.
She talks about how she has been, during her assault, during her violence, how she was handcuffed. And so even the concept of handcuffs is a trigger for her.
And somebody, Marshall's wife, leaves handcuffs on her car.
Let's not.
Spoiler. Okay, so oops, spoiler.
Or is it?
Or,
I mean, that's
true. We are changing things a little bit.
We're tweaking stuff around, but somebody leaves as a joke.
Sorry.
Yeah.
As a mean prank.
As a mean prank, a set of handcuffs out in the open.
And that triggers her.
You know, and unless you've been through that, you won't necessarily understand that.
And you know, it's actually, when I think about it, there's the husband and wife with the motorhome.
Yeah, the Yorks.
The Yorks'
yes.
Daughter,
Sarah
is currently going through a trial to testify against her assailant, her rapist.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, and maybe we can talk about this, I'd love to have some feedback from you. Oh, hey, Fallon, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I'd love to have some feedback from the people who are watching. You know, there's a moment where Lily could have shown some empathy to the Yorks, but in the book, she doesn't. In the book, she just sort of like retreats and wants to keep this
very hands off.
She doesn't want to talk about it. So I'd be curious to know, for the people who are listening, is, would you want to see that as a character option where she could engage with them and say, you know what, I understand, and if you ever want somebody to talk to, I'm here.
There is another character who is in all of the books, and it isn't until book 5 you know that she too is a survivor.
Really?
Yep. And I'm thinking that could be something that builds that rapport sooner.
Okay.
So that's...
Oh, can you tell me, like, after the...
Yeah, we'll do.
We won't spoil it.
So that's something we can think about, because we want to encompass the whole series. And how would that have changed the story if she'd revealed that sooner?
Mm-hmm. You know, so that Lily would feel like she had an ally.
Yes, or understand her sooner.
Yes. I think, you know, at the end of the day, as human beings, the thing that I think that drives us is that sense that we want to be connected to people. And Lily does, she's not really good at connecting with people. And I get that. I get that she has trust issues.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a deep scarring experience to go through. And even that moment where she has a romance with somebody in the book. I'm assuming you've all read the novels, but for those of you that haven't,
that's okay.
You know,
because we're going to change that anyways.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of changes to keep it fresh for all of you. Yep. But you know, when she has that act of physical intimacy with someone, I can't imagine how much that would have taken for her as a character, as a woman, to be able. And you know, it's not easy.
Yeah,
it's not easy.
Even in book 5, that is where she actually really talks about it finally, and how she is so afraid that it's her turn to come up in this survivors circle to share her story. But the change that happens as a result of that. And that's, to be true and honest to that character, we have to make choices about how we design this game.
Yeah.
We are going to honor that character arc.
And I think that we're coming onto a time, you know, I think like film has been around for well over 100 years. We've had black and white talkies all the way up to phone, like
black and white silence all the way up
yeah,
to,
yeah, absolutely.
right?
So black and white silent films all the way up to films that have been made literally on phones and then edited through, and books and all of, and video games are still very much, I think, in its infancy.
Yes.
We have a responsibility as an artistic medium, and I hope that you'll agree that, you know, that there's so much room to
explore these issues.
Yeah. So I want to just talk about some of the other games that we've encountered, and talk about like what did they do right in terms of going deeper into heavier topics.
Yeah.
So the one that always comes to mind for me is that Dragon Cancer. And
can I sort of mention up front before we sort of get to that, is there's a great book by Ian Bogost called Persuasive Games, where he wrote it in 2010, and where he really looks at showing what video games could do and how they deal with more mature topics. And he was one of the first people to really, I think, bring that out into the open. So if you haven't rented it as a library book, or, you know, check it out online, there's some great discussion topics in there. My copy is stored away somewhere, so, but that is a great starting point for anyone who wants to sort of follow that through from an academic sense. That Dragon Cancer, though, is probably one of the more famous ones.
And that was released last year. Yep. It's a heartbreaking game.
Yeah.
And people were very affected by it. And it was a look at the loss of a young child through the eyes of his parents. Mm-hmm. This was a game made by the parents who had lost this child. It's, you know, it's not like, oh, let's create a game with this heavy stuff. It's like they wanted to be able to express themselves in this artistic medium. And, you know, it was amazing to see. I met the creator, I think about 8 months before they finished it. And then I got to see all of the press that sort of, it went around the world.
Yeah.
It impacted people.
Yep.
And we're starting to see more and more of real storytelling, real heartfelt stories starting to emerge in the video game space. So I think that's, you know, when I first read the Lily Bard novel, and I thought, okay, let's approach Charlene. This is the series that we want to purchase the rights for. I don't know, I guess for me, I wasn't thinking about Lily's backstory. It had more to do with who she was as a person. And I never got a sense that Lily was weak.
Oh, no, not at all.
She's human.
She's a survivor.
She does what it takes. She does what it takes. And I don't know, maybe I just have a bias towards women who get her done.
Just wait till you book 4.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I would love to know, I mean, out of the two of us, you play a lot more games, like on a huge range of games. What are some of the games that you've played in the last, you know, year or two that strike you from a deeper sense of storytelling?
Sure. For me, probably the most important one I've played in the last 2 years is a game called This War of Mine. And it's great in that you are experiencing a war firsthand through survivors. And it's not an easy subject. On one hand, you could think of it like a Sims game, except a Sims game where if you make a mistake, you go hungry, you can die by depression, you can die from cold, where you can be attacked and, you know, you prevent a rape during the game and you have the choices on that. It's a tough subject, and the way they designed the game, I believe it's a Polish company. It was based on the Chechen conflict.
Hmm.
And it's based on actual accounts of survivors. And so they've tried to make this as very real and yet honor these stories. In fact, when you buy the game, a percentage of your purchase goes towards supporting survivors.
And that is something that you and I had talked about with respect to the Lily Bard series, that we like to find the right organization so that a percentage of the proceeds from game sales will go to help assaulted women in North America and beyond, because we are looking beyond just North America for publishing. But
there was recently, so a board game version has recently come out of this War of Mine. I kickstarted it, I supported it. But there was a serious review that was given of the game quite recently, and this guy's a top game reviewer, and he has as much said, "This is a good game. I don't know if I would play it again. It's not happy enough for me."
Right.
And for me, I'm attracted by dark subjects, or because I think when we as human beings are put in these dark situations, it shows how we as human beings can shine and can overcome. And for me, that level of struggle is important.
Well, and I think that is something that we see as the character arc in that first novel, is we see Lily going from doesn't talk to anybody, doesn't even really talk to her own clients, her own cleaning clients, to, as we get to the end, she has personal relationships with a few people, and she's no longer living in fear. Like, I remember one of the lines is like, I don't feel like I have to live in fear of somebody knowing my secret. I have ownership over it.
Yes.
And, that's such a powerful thing.
Yeah. From where she starts.
So I hope that people who are watching, and if they've had the experience of sexual violence in their own lives, that they have the support network that they need to process what they have experienced.
Do you want to put up some details on that?
I certainly will. I'll put up a link to the helplines that are here in Canada, but I'll also make sure that I include a link to the ones in the United States as well. We don't want to open up a can of worms and feel like we're just going to leave people hanging. And that's something that's really important to us. This is not about entertainment. We take this very, we take this seriously. It is. It is
a kind of story, and it deserves to be read or expressed.
And I think we'd be really awful game developers if we just glossed over it.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think we have a responsibility to express why she is the way that she is without making it salacious.
So, and I'll also put a link to Tom Basil's review of this War of Mine. But how would you feel if somebody said that about our game? That it's a good game, but I just can't play it. It's just...
that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, you'd really have to ask people who have read. For those of you who have read the novels,
yeah, exactly. Let's throw that out there.
Have you reread the novels? Do you just read them and do you go back?
A very affirmative yes here.
Lori is like, yes, okay, exactly. So you reread these novels because you care about the characters.
Yeah.
There's never a point in the novel where I personally didn't care. I cared about Lily, and I'm curious. I guess I need to get a move on reading all 5 because I'm dying. You're such a tease, right? Good. So Ellen, so you said you reread the series. How many times have you reread it? Did you reread it twice, more than 2-3 times? And what did you get out of it? What is in it for you to reread?
If you even want to email that to us,
sure,
that would be great.
You can leave like a follow-up comment. That's a really, like, I know for us, I'm a huge movie buff, and I love watching movies that do have a deeper, darker side. This morning we were talking about, at breakfast, we were talking about unicorns and serial killers, because I like unicorns, but I also like watching mysteries
yeah.
because I like figuring out who done it. I love figuring out. See,
That's a great comment.
This is Josh says, if an experience is powerful enough, you don't have to play or read it again because it stays with you. And I think that there are, and then Neil is chiming in under the official Lily Bard account. The fifth book is a big deal for Lily's arc.
Yes.
Thank you, Neil.
Yes.
And, it's...
Can I do one thing? Just sort of go ahead.
What are you doing?
Well, I'm going to just sort of say...
podcast at onemorestorygames.com is where you can email us. Rebecca says, I don't tend to reread mysteries. Rebecca, is that because you already know who done it? Because that would make sense.
So if you'd like to send any comments about that issue, I think that would be really worthwhile as a follow-up discussion.
Okay, and Ellen says probably 2 or 3 times for the series, the characters and growth is captivating.
Yes.
That is, it's funny. So this past week, while you were away, because you also went away, I went to see Wonder Woman for the second time.
Okay, yeah.
Because we were just about to go see it the last time you and I went.
Yeah, we
together.
took it. Yeah.
And I had already seen the movie. I went with a friend who had not seen it already. And this time I could watch it from a different perspective. And for me, I was looking specifically for hints in the film or sort of like the lens or the, I don't know, tone, something like that. I was looking at it through the lens of where does that character express love and compassion?
Oh, interesting.
So I put my little love and compassion glasses on. I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm seeing it here and here and here. Because what I didn't like about the film when I first saw it was I felt like there was so much war that they glorified it. But when I saw it again through the second time, I realized they don't glorify war.
Interesting.
They didn't quite take it to the level of, say, what's that movie, Saving Private Ryan?
Yes.
That,
That's a tough movie.
That is a tough movie. That does not glorify war at all.
I don't think so.
But I don't think you needed that in Wonder Woman in order to get the point across. Yeah. The point across in Wonder Woman is that she is a strong superhero who happens to be a woman, who cares about people, and that, love triumphs. So if you haven't seen it, it's a really fantastic film, and I think we should all collectively do our part to support women-driven narratives, whether that be in games or music, film, and TV.
Also honoring the people who don't normally have that voice. Yeah, go ahead and show that one.
I know who done it.
Once I know who done it,
I will reread the characters if the stories are compelling. Comes comfort reading. Well, and I do that a lot with our DVDs and stuff like that. I might just like put on a DVD and have it on in the background. I love watching The Godfather. I know it was you, Fredo. I never get tired of that. So I could recite the film. I
go back and rewatch Fincher's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. That particular scene is difficult for me.
Do you fast forward?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I don't. And because I think that, because I love the character, and maybe that's true for you, Rebecca, is that I want to be with that character because I love that character so much, right? And hopefully you'll love our version of Lily Bard, that is...
Well, time is ticking away. We've got less than 4 months to get this game. No pressure. It is coming together, and it's quite exciting. I think we can sort of wrap up that the heavy part of the podcast conversation. So we're switching topics now, and so I've been traveling. Mm-hmm. So last week I was in Miramichi. I was the keynote for the Small Games Conference. Really wonderful place. So if you haven't been to Atlantic Canada, really, really loved it. And yes, Neil, who is helping Blair write the game.
Yeah.
And Blair was in Costa Rica.
I was. That's why I have my Rainforest Cafe mug.
Rainforest with Costa Rican coffee.
With Costa Rican coffee, no less. So.
And you brought me a little friend.
I did. Would you like to see your little friend?
I think everybody needs to meet. We need a little bit of lightness.
Here's your new little friend.
No, that's not our little friend. No,
that's Ginger.
She's an old friend.
That's right.
So Ginger's been around for almost 20 years. Okay, Ginger, bye. Let us bring our new friend, Millie the Sloth. Okay. So it is all fun and games at One More Story Games. Oh, she's so cute.
Mm-hmm.
So Costa Rica must have been really interesting for you to experience. And you met some animation studios.
I
while
did,
you were down there.
while I was down there. Yep.
So in Costa Rica, from the things that you had said, is like they're quite advanced and they really want technology and they love what we are doing with storytelling.
Yeah, very much so.
So I imagine serious games have room in the Costa Rican culture.
Very much so. All of, I think, the companies that I met with were very humbled by what we're trying to do and that we want to make a difference. And the impact that games can have on a society as a whole is quite exciting. And, there's more I wish I could tell at this point. But, I mean, it was just such an enriching experience to meet men and women who want games to do more within their culture, their society.
I think games can do so much more. And, we're just tapping the surface. And, I'd like to think that our enthusiasm,
our passion
comes across in whether we're doing the developers talk and we're talking about the Lily Bard project, or if we're talking about the technology that we built that is the foundation of this entire company. At the end of the day, what I want is, selfishly, I want space for people to create the stories that need to be heard. So whether they are stories of refugees, if they are stories we had somebody ask us about, could you create a game for Japanese internment camps to accompany a documentary? Yes, I wouldn't call it a game. I would call it an interactive experience.
Yeah.
There are so many stories and family histories that are out there, and we want more people to have access to that.
Or even we had spoken with people who, when news is occurring, to be able to put together some kind of simulation to better understand the history of that. So this was talking about the Syrian conflicts. Yeah. And so that if a news organization could not only inform about what the events are that are occurring, but what are the events that have led to that, so that you as viewers have a better understanding of.
Because I think in today's world, the challenge is we're inundated with information. I've noticed a lot of organizations rely on video. Like, video is the number one consumed way for news.
Yes.
I personally prefer text. I like to be able to quickly read, and I don't like to wait to see what is being said in the video. But since video and interactivity, our consumption of interactive content has gone through the roof. So it would be really fantastic, sometime next year to be able to partner with a CNN-like organization and to be able to take those pressing issues so that people can live through that, not because we want to trigger them, but because we want to provide
a better understanding. And you see and the one thing that video games can do more than any other medium is to show the consequences of choice. That is so that you can understand what it's like, like To Kill a Mockingbird, to walk in somebody's shoes.
Imagine the people who would normally tune out a news broadcast, that they would go and experience what it's like to be a refugee. And hopefully, I would hope that they would have a deeper sense of empathy and compassion for their fellow human being.
There's studies already being shown that this is the case.
So that's, we are so, I don't know, we're pie in the sky, and we really want to make a difference. And this is really, I think, our first foray into a serious game, because if you go to our website, which is onemorestorygames.com, you will see that our games are they're fun.
They're quirky.
They're quirky. They're escapist, especially if you've played Danielle's Inferno and the 9 Circles of Hell. It's definitely not intense. And we could have made it so much more intense, because we're dealing with gluttony and lust and betrayal and greed,
fraud.
and fraud. I mean, we kept it very light. Yeah. we kept
it's
it
meant
very
to
light.
be. That is the focus of that work.
Yes.
And that's nothing against the author of that work at all. That's
Dante held no.
No, well, I mean,
he did not hold his tongue. I think that was the cautionary tale of its time.
Well, and why it is a comedy. Right.
So, and I just want to return back to, it's interesting how this series was written in 1996. So book 1, sexual assault and violence, and which is revisited in book 4, racial tension, which is in
will
book
be
2.
Pervasive throughout the whole series.
And well, absolutely, because it is set in the South and in Arkansas. But these are still, sadly, 21 years later, they are still heavy, hanging in the air. It's
been an issue for all of humanity, right?
You'd think that we would be able to figure this out, and it's just madness to me. So there's still a lot of conflict that's lingering in our collective consciousness, and you see that in what's happening with the Bill Cosby trial that just happened, the things that were said during the presidential election. I won't even go there. Buy me a glass of wine. We can talk about that, but I'm going to leave it off the podcast.
Or even then, if you want to submit your own ideas and things that are frustrations that you wish games could take on, that would be very interesting, because I'd love to start creating a list of a catalog of those things to try to go after down the road.
And I imagine that when we get into book 2 and beyond, because racism isn't really that prevalent in book 1, it's there.
Subtle. It's subtle, but it is there.
Subtle racism. It's there, but in book 2, it's prevalent, and we are going to have a conversation about Black Lives Matter, and we will ensure that we have really great and informed speakers be part of that podcast.
Yes, be part of that discussion.
Because I don't think that as two white people that we should take ownership over that conversation. So we really want to be respectful of the community. So that is pretty much it for this week's podcast. We really appreciate your joining and listening.
Hopefully next week we'll have more to show you about where the game is going. So I think we're getting off some stuff to Charlene here, and we can start nailing down when Charlene's going to be on the show, which will be exciting.
Right. If you missed the announcement last week or 2 weeks ago, Charlene will be on an upcoming version of our podcast. We're super excited. And so thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Lori and Rebecca and Neil and Ellen for your comments.
Joshua.
And Josh as well. We really appreciate the comments and the feedback, because
I know this is starting small, but hopefully these kind of episodes and talks will have far reaches.
Yes. We also, just so you know, we do have, if you want to just replay the audio only, we're on the iTunes store. We'll make sure that the link is on there as well.
You won't be able to see Millie, but that's
well,
maybe I'll put a picture and Millie can pop up in the podcast.
But thank you again for joining us, and
it's an absolute pleasure, folks. You keep us going.
All right. Have a great weekend.
Thank
Bye.
you. See you next week.